What's going on, Mr. Martin? Where's everyone?
They're in the boardroom, Miss Daly.
Oh, okay, there they are.
She's still seizing.
Thank you.
Doing spicy.
You're welcome, man.
Paul loves food. Whatever his diabetes mates.
Mr. Perez, that camera in the boardroom is pointing really high. You might want to move it down just a little bit.
Steve, that was the whole purpose. Right there.
There you go. That's better. Thanks.
I'm sorry. I'm holding the instruction.
Yeah, I don't know. Are any of the coaches on, do you know?
Rena, if you go to camera settings, I don't think it's in HD right now because the coverage is really small.
Who are we waiting for? I'm here.
Emily, it's not 5:30 over here yet.
I'm in the same place you are.
Calm down. It shows 5:29 in my area.
Well, I can't see you, so I didn't even know if you were there. I thought we were waiting for somebody.
No, as long as you're here, that's all we were waiting for.
You could move over a little closer to Ron so we can see you in the picture.
Okay.
I tried.
Can you see if Dr. Guy's on?
Is Dr. Richard?
No. We have a quorum now.
Let's do it. Oh, it's 5:29.
Oh, gosh.
It is.
Oh, there it is.
5:30. Ready?
Offering home services.
Call the meeting to order at 5:30. Let's stand for the pledge.
Telling everyone.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Keep
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
in as little as 7 days.
Somebody has their mic on.
Because you can't have a healthy smile without healthy gums. Advanced Gum Restore from Crest, the #1 toothpaste brand in America.
Doing spicy.
There's some. Okay, we got it. Roll call.
Signs of a brand new.
CS7, we have iOS.
We have somebody with their microphone on. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Guy Shambo. Dr. Guy. Emily Hunt Daly.
Here.
Richard Jones.
I'm here.
Leon Sandoval.
Present.
Ron Ortiz.
I'm here. Adoption of the agenda, Superintendent Perez, your recommendation.
So good evening, everybody. Mr. President, Board. I recommend that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Need a motion?
So move. Dion Sandoval.
Need a second?
Emily Hunt Daly, second.
Roll call.
Emily Hunt Daly. Emily.
Here, yes.
Richard Jones.
Aye.
Leon.
Hi.
Ron.
Aye. adoption of the minutes of June 15, 2021. Your recommendation, Mr. Perez?
Sir, Mr. President Board, I recommend that we adopt the minutes of June 15th, 2021 as presented.
Okay, I need a motion.
Emily Hunt Daly, so moved.
Guy Shambo seconds.
Okay, roll call.
Dr. Guy,
Yes.
Emily Hunt Daly,
Yes.
Richard Jones,
Aye.
Leon Sandoval,
Aye.
Ron Ortiz.
Aye. Recognitions tonight, Superintendent Perez.
Yes, sir, Mr. President Board. Once again, it's always a pleasure to recognize our staff and students this evening. Special mention and honor to the instructional coaches who have undergone a significant change over the last year. And I always refer to them when I talk to them regularly as the change agents for the district. They are on the front lines of our academic push and doing a good job with it. They have been the presenters for the professional development for teachers all summer. They spent a significant amount of hours working on our items for our assessment. They have spent a lot of time on shoring up our protocols for examining student work. And then, of course, more recently, getting with all the teachers and pushing out the district learning plans and going over it with all the teachers that had signed up for summer professional development this summer. So I'd like to this evening give a big shout out to that group of coaches. And they've, of course, they are supervised by the principals, but also guided and directed by Ms. Reina Sanchez, our Director of Academic Services. So I really appreciate the group, the leadership, and the work that's been done. So did you want to share anything about the coaches?
I just wanted to say that it's a phenomenal group of instructional leaders at their campus, and they have done a lot of work, and we have really good momentum, and they're ready to do some more work. So they'll come back in at the beginning of the year and continue with that work. So it's a great group, and thank you all for all you do and your dedication to your work.
And so on behalf of the administration, the school board, we have a certificate for each one of you instructional coaches, and we'll have those available here. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Citizens to address the board tonight. There's no one to address the board. We'll move on to presentations. Superintendent Perez.
Yes, sir, Mr. President Board. So this evening, we wanted to give another snapshot of just how things are working. It's been an interesting 2 years as far as academics and assessment, engaging and measurement. Because a couple of years ago, when the COVID hit that spring, PED pretty much disbanded or forewent the summative assessment, which we used to look at, we used to see as PARC, our final PARC assessment, where we're giving the school grades and the academic performance of every student to the district, and that was carved in stone and sent. And that's what painted the face of every district in the state. So because of the pandemic, that just didn't happen at all in the spring of that year. Then we went the full year with the closures, lockdown, and at the end of the last school year, it became an option. And so most districts were choosing at one point not to do the assessment, and then they were, then they weren't. So what ended up then at the final, the end of that year, is that we didn't have a very good turnout for the students. You know, we pushed it out, but as an option, a lot of students and parents chose not to participate. Several reasons. Some of the reasons were, in order to take the assessment, they had to be on site, and parents were choosing not to have their kids be on site to take the assessment. So in the long story short, we blew a bunch of holes in the state assessment process over the last couple of years. Now, the good side of it is we, as you know, in the last couple of years, we have implemented our district quarterly assessment. So we didn't abandon all of our measures of student assessments. We still have our quarterly assessment, which measures all the standards at all the grade levels every quarter. And that's what we hear us talk about, the standard aligned learning system. We're teaching what's being tested and tested what's being taught, and that's the aligned system. So in place of those summative state assessments, we have the quarterly assessment, which is, it's actually, in my mind, it's better for us as far as instruction. The state assessment kind of like gives you the autopsy after the fact, you know, and the quarterly assessment, what it does is this helps us gauge the student success, the student measurement as we go every quarter. So it can be used by the teachers to help those students know who the struggling students are, know who the students are that are doing well. So that's what's been going on with the assessment. So we bring the information to you this evening, not to inform you that we've had some kind of a success or failure or, you know, that type of thing, but more of to give the board and the public a glance at the system. In other words, taking a look at, we have tools in place that we can look at students' progress. We can look at and measure the students' growth in a way that we can utilize for instruction, which will benefit. I think we're all used to, and us as educators as well, looking at PARC. And when you look at PARC, the year's over. You look at and you sit around the table and you look at all the charts and graphs and so on and so forth. But it's all information that's already passed. And so it's difficult to make real specific plans for the next year. So that's what's good about our quarterly assessment. We're measuring more regularly throughout the year. And so the idea tonight in presenting this, to give you an idea of how each of the grade levels and every student, we can look at how they're doing with every standard. And that's what's beneficial to us, because then the teachers know, okay, this student here in the 6th grade is struggling with standard 6.2. And then they can dig into that and find out what's going on with the student. They can do that same thing with every student that has taken that assessment throughout the school year. So the intention and the purpose of this is to have you take a look at what we look at when we're working with the students and when we're working with the grade levels. It's a tool that we see every quarter. Now, our Illuminate, which you will see by grade level, Ms. Sanchez will be presenting that in just a second. That's the assessment that we have in math and ELA. That fits right along with our district learning plan that we've been working on for about a year. So every teacher has a booklet, a district learning plan for math and one for English language arts. And in that, it gives you the plan, the scope and the sequence and the calendar of how those standards should be taught. So we had a lot of good conversations with the teachers over the summer, and as we've been developing this over the last year. And I think the bottom line, it's very common sense, and it's in the most simple way. It is, here is your roadmap for the semester. Here's your roadmap for the quarter. Here's your roadmap for the school year. And then the assessment that we have in place is lined up with everything that's going to be taught. And that's the way it should be. You know, I think what's happened in the past years with a lot of people, and I'm not saying anything bad about it because we've all been guilty of it ourselves, is we would take the textbook, commercial textbook, and we have these very lucrative vendors that bring you a shiny textbook and say, this is your answer. you do this and your problems are solved. But as we see, we looked at the last 15 years, we've done that over and over and over and over. And some districts will see a little bit of success and a little bit of failure. Some that really do good. But in most districts, we haven't seen real significant gains. So we have, if we're gonna keep doing the same thing, you're gonna get the same results. So the idea here is we're gonna do something a little bit different. We're going to systemically look at standards, not just talk about it and move on, but we're gonna systemically look at every standard, look at every student, how they're doing on those standards. And then then all the other things come into place. When you look at those, then you could determine your professional development needs. You could determine which students need extra help, struggling students, and then you could put into place your interventions for those struggling students. So that's basically the premise. That's the system in a nutshell. I wanted to make sure that I overviewed this because I want all to understand when we present the data as we are this evening, it's not really to come to any kind of conclusion at this point, but it is, you're gonna see our dashboard that we look at regularly. And this dashboard is very important as we move on from month to month, from quarter to quarter, because we have to have a gauge to know if we're staying on the right highway. So I just wanted to add that before we turn it over to Ms. Sanchez. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Pettis, and board members. As Mr. Pettis said, this will be just a quick update of what we're doing right now with academics. So I wanted to update everyone on the professional development. Our summer learning has concluded. Today was the last day of summer learning for what we have right now. We had 9 two-day sessions of the district learning plan and examining student work. We had anticipated 85 teachers total, and it's probably closer to 100 now with what we had for yesterday and today. We will offer additional sessions on select Saturdays in September and October, as well as during the regular school week for those that can't make it on the Saturdays. All of our instructional coaches, as Mr. Pettis said, are the ones that drove these sessions, and they were very thoughtful. All of the discussion was very good, very authentic. There was a lot of really, really good questions from teachers. They're excited about the district learning plan and having some direction and guidance. They're also excited to have to be able to ask more questions about the standards that they're going to be teaching, and examining the student work to make them better. So they really did see the value in using each other to make their teaching and learning for their students better. So here's an example of the chart that Mr. Pettis had referenced. This is all of the Illuminate standards that were taught or tested last year on our Illuminate assessments. So all of these are kindergarten standards that are taught. There are more standards that were not tested that are also taught, but these are the ones that we were able to collect some data from Illuminate. And so what we'll use this for moving forward is every quarter we'll meet with the kindergarten teachers. We'll meet with the first grade teachers in every grade level. And so we'll look at this and we'll say, for quarter 1, these are the standards that are in your DLP. So these are the standards that are in your district learning plan. So out of these quarter 1 standards, this is how we performed last year. And this is, you know, we can look at these and say, where do you think that we need to focus or target our instruction? What do you think that you need the most help with? For example, these are this is a standard for quarter 1. It's RL, which is reading with literature, kindergarten, the first grade, or the first standard, with prompting and support, ask and answer questions about key details. So something that some of the teachers were expressing that they had a hard time, that students have a hard time, is actually asking the questions rather than just answering questions about a specific story. So not just a question that they get out of nowhere, but a question about a text. And so that's something that will definitely provide resources for the teachers to do and help for them to do. And then the students will have a better chance at passing these standards whenever they are assessed on them again. And so we have this data for first grade, ELA, for second grade, all the way up to 11th grade where it was tested.
Good comment there.
Go ahead.
So just a comment. So this is like the 5,000 foot view and the surface level when we look at it as a district. Now, when you get closer to the school site and the classroom, we're asking when they set goals to not use percentages, but to use actual numbers of students. How many students took the test? How many students in that group were successful in that standard? So when you do that, that's the next level because it gets more real. So you start to put the faces to the numbers. You start to put the names to the numbers, and then the teachers and the classrooms in the school, when they're making their plans and their goals for the school year, they're actually counting students who are becoming successful rather than just looking at numbers or percentages.
We have these broken down by school site and grade level also. So as they're looking at these in their school PLCs, in their grade level PLCs, they're not looking at the entire district, they're just looking at their school. So when they're doing those numbers, like Mr. Pettis said, they will be looking at numbers of students that were assessed at their school and numbers of students that were successful at their school. So they'll look at those deficits or those successes and be able to plan accordingly.
And I'd like to make a note about the PLCs. So at every school site, we have asked every school and have received a common time for them to have the PLCs at every school, so that there's time for the teachers to collaborate on this. And it's we take it seriously. This is so important that we do require that every school has a PLC meeting at least once a week. And there's some schools that are having the PLCs twice a week.
And so this is just an example to show you that we have them for first grade and we have the quarters set with the district learning plan. And then we also have them for all the way up to Algebra 1. And you can see when we get up to high school, we went from kindergarten and first grade all the way up to Algebra 1. The number of standards that they're expected to know increases quite a bit. And so we look at these and we know that we have some work to do in all areas, but we also know that in the high school math areas, we have a lot more work to do. And so high school was the group that just had theirs the last 2 days. And so they're ready to tackle all of these standards also. Our testing has changed a little bit. And so, for example, we have our Illuminate, we'll keep that. Our ELA and math will be quarterly by standard for each grade level. Our district learning plan outlines which standards will be assessed each quarter. This year, we will give the IMSSA, the interim New Mexico measures of student success and achievement to grades 3 through 8.
Formerly PARC, that's what we used to be our PARC
This is
system.
the interim though, so they'll be getting this
Oh,
at the
okay, that's
beginning
right,
of the year, the middle
The
and the
next
end
one,
of the year.
the next
And
one.
that's part of the agreement that we have when we do K-5 plus, that we assess students with the interim New Mexico measures of student success and achievement. Then we'll have the summative, which is the New Mexico measures of student success and achievement for grades 3 through 8. We'll have the NMASR, which is the assessment of science readiness for grades 5, 8, and 11. The SAT school day is for juniors in high school. We will still have iStation, the ISIP, the student indicators of progress for grades 3, K through 3 reading, and that's a beginning, middle, and end of the year assessment also. For some of our students, we will have the dynamic learning maps. That's 3, 8, and 11 ELA and math, and 5, 8, and 11 science. And then we will have the access for English language learners for grades K through 12. And I just wanted to conclude with some events that are happening. We're getting back into the swing of being back in person. And so Laguna Acoma will have a 7th grade orientation since their school is 7th grade through 12th grade. On the 3rd from 8 to 10. Grants High School will also have theirs on the 3rd from 8 to 10, and that'll be their freshman back to school kickoff. And Grants High School decided to do a sophomore back to school boost since some of their sophomores never got to be in person last year. So that'll be from 1 to 3 on August the 3rd, and then on August the 4th, they'll have new student registration. And then Los Alamitos will have their 7th grade orientation and campus tour on the 3rd at 6 p.m. That was a mistake in yours. I think it said 8 to 10 a.m., but it's at 6 p.m. So that is what I have for today. Are there any questions that I could answer?
Any comments or questions from the board?
There was a question in the chat about how fine arts and PE are involved. So all teachers are eventually will be required to take the district learning plan and the examining student work. And so immediately they'll be able to implement the examining student work into their PLCs because they also have PLCs. All of our elective courses, PE, fine arts, all of our CTE courses have standards that they teach off of. And so throughout this school year, we will be working with them to create scope and sequence, some kind of assessment that they will take. And so it's a work in progress, but they were able to choose if they are secondary or if they're elementary and they don't teach one of the common grade levels, then they will also be with the English language arts or the math. They can incorporate those English language arts standards into their work as well.
And social study standards are under construction at the state level.
They were supposed to be out by this summer and that didn't happen. So that's still a work in progress. Science standards, we're using the next gen science standards. And so we'll work out a scope and sequence with those standards as well.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Audit and action plan update, Mr. Perez.
Okay. So the with this, the audit, as you know, we had findings as most districts do every year. And with the findings, we get a corrective action plan that we work on to improve how we're doing business. And so I have Mr. Maldonado, you want to share a little bit on how we're doing with that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I wanted to give you an update today on not just the audit, but we're going to cover 3 areas, sort of what's happening with our prior year findings, what's happening with this current school year budget, and then a few challenges that we're facing, some persistent issues that what we're doing to address them in terms of how we manage the budget. So I'm going to briefly go through these prior year findings. Remember, the year before that, we had 26 findings. Last year, when we filed, it was actually this year, but when we filed late, we actually had 12. So an improvement in those findings. And the one of the biggest ones, or the most meaningful, I guess, would be this cash control and this #1 finding where our general ledger account balances didn't reconcile with some because of inactive funds that we had with positive and negative balances at the at the state level. So if you remember, these are from 11, 12 years ago. As we move forward, they were stale funds or dead funds that we never really quite got off of our books. And what it looked like is every time we had an audit or every time we closed our books and reported to the state, we reported on income and expenses, but the balance sheet in terms of how much cash and assets we had, that never really completely reconciled. And so while each year to year we were able to report how much we spent and how much we brought in and where things were, we still had this nagging group of balances out over there that we owed to the state and that they owed to us. All these, there's probably, I don't know, probably 20 different funds in there that were either no longer valid or stale or whatever. We never really cleaned them off the books. And the auditors prior to Manning and Associates never really identified those and said, hey, you know, this is an issue. But when Manning came in to audit, they said, look, your cash balance that you say you have in the bank doesn't reconcile with what the balance sheet says because of these other things. So there was no what's the word? There was no malfeasance, but there was a misconstruing of the actual balance sheet. So because of those findings, we worked really hard to begin to clean those up. And this year, because of the most recent audit that we filed in January, right? That's when we said, we began to identify which of those funds we needed to clean up, how we're going to do that. And so then we began to do that. And before we closed our fiscal year in June 30th, we were able to do some permanent cash transfers for about half of those funds, which is really good because the PED really worked with us on getting those done. So we're going to move forward, even though it probably be another finding for us, and because we don't completely reconcile, but we completely understand where the issues are. We're moving forward with addressing them and getting that permanent cash transfer done so that by next June 30th, when we close our books, those issues will be gone completely and our bank balance will completely reconcile with our cash balances according to the state. So that's really positive. The other issue here in our cash controls was that we had all those 6 accounts, bank accounts that we consolidated down to 1. And one of the issues in that cash control was that we were not completing the bank reconciliations, the checking account reconciliations on time. And one of the issues was we had difficult time identifying where the cash was in these other funds. So they're all tied together. And now moving forward, because we went from 6 accounts to 1, we're not going to have that issue. And our accountant, he balances the books every single month within 30 days after we get the bank statement. The other issue is we have stale dated checks. So in the school district, checks are open to cash for up to a year, unlike maybe our personal bank accounts, where if we wrote a check to someone, it's good for 90 days. And if they don't cash that check, then it's considered stale. Well, in the school district, because we had 6 accounts, we were writing checks over the years. We're talking about years of accumulation. And now we have stale dated checks that we have to clear off our books. So now that we've identified the permanent cash transfers, which were the big issue for us, we can move forward with clearing those stale dated checks. And clearing those stale dated checks means a lot of homework on our part, contacting the payee, making sure that either they still have it or we can go ahead and void those checks. So there's a little bit of work to get done there. The second issue that we had a finding on was our fixed assets, that we were not assigning an individual to track fixed assets and that we were not capitalizing them properly. And again, this is an accumulation of issues over the years that we're working to fix and put a process in place so that we can move forward. We have some consultants working with us right now to identify exactly in this year where things are so that we can make the proper allocation and get sort of a fresh start on our fixed assets. And then we have a plan in place for how we're going to account for those moving forward. I believe that after this, or during this school year, we would have solved this problem. But during the current audit for last year, which is 2021, the audit for the one that just closed will probably still result in a finding for us. But it's important to note that as we continue to make progress, those findings will drop off one by one. The third one is the improper bid or RFP procedures. And there were two issues in the last year. Where one was that when we purchased that driver's ed program for the Grants High School, that's electronic driver's ed, we believed it was a sole source. We couldn't find any other vendor that provided a service like that. Turns out there were, and we didn't do the proper due diligence, so that was a finding. And then there was one bid or RFP that when we posted the announcement, it was 9 days before the opening instead of 10. So what we've done now is we've said, well, we're going to extend that notification time, and now our minimum, even though the law says we have to have a minimum of 10, we're extending them out to 15. We don't want to get caught with that in place again. And we also have a new process in place for identifying sole source providers. The fourth one was the improper cost allocation and what's called a director oversight of funds. And here we're talking mostly about federal funds or funds that are outside of the purview of the business office, not necessarily directly, but indirectly, where fund managers have to now have more oversight over the expenses that their funds are being allocated for, and that they're allocated to the correct line item and fund. So what we've done is we're going to now make fund managers more involved in the expenditures and oversight of that. So they'll be trained to review and approve all expenses. And in fact, they're going to originate the budget adjustment requests, the BARs, and the request for reimbursement, the RFRs. So, and we're going to put a process in place where we'll be reviewing those quarterly so that every quarter we have an absolute perfect idea of what cash is being expended from each of these funds. The fifth one was the lack of employee time and effort documentation, again, having to do with federal funds that we have. So imagine this, we have employees throughout the district, they're deployed throughout the different schools who are funded by the federal funds, and we did not have a process in place to ensure that those hours that were dedicated by that employee were 100% dedicated to federal fund programs. So for example, one example might be, say, a principal might have taken an employee who is funded by a federal fund program and asked them to substitute in a class. Well, that time of substituting in the class has to be taken off of the federal fund and put onto the GO account. And so now Dr. Martin has a great process in place for completing what's called this PAR report. And so that won't happen again. We'll have a better, again, more involved in the actual review of those expenses. And so we'll make sure that that doesn't happen again. Then number 6 is
Mr.
Yes.
Maldonado.
Yes.
We have a question on the chat. The question is, will the budget management be pushed down to the principals? I think the extent that the principals are involved in budget management is they do at this year receive $55 per student that will be allotted as discretionary for each school site. And then schools get a small portion of Title I funds at the school sites that they can use at their prerogative. Outside of that, they're not really, I think the program budget management stops at the program manager level, if that helps answer that question.
That is correct. And another fail-safe we're putting in place with this year's budget is that we put a tag or a flag on each of the budgets so that nobody can overspend, right? They'll be able to see on their iVisions reports exactly where they are and exactly how much balance they have. And there'll be a flag that if they attempt to put in a requisition for more than what they have in that budget balance, it'll stop it. And so we'll be able to continue managing that. So I think it's just great oversight. It's a wonderful tool for us to help those who are who have a direct oversight with spending the money to understand where things are and to better control that. So this cash report, yes.
How hard is it gonna be for finding number 5? I mean, tracking employees' hours and costs, that looks like it's gonna be a heck of a task for somebody to keep up with.
Well, that's another great question, Mr. Sandoval. Dr. Martin is keeping close contact with those who are managing those funds and making sure that we have proper hourly management and documentation. So it's not just for the hourly people, it's also for those, it could be for certified staff, and we're keeping track of everything that's going on. So I think there's going to be some bumps along the road, but we have to get a handle on this. So we're going to be putting a lot of effort and a lot of oversight into this. So I think it's going to take some time. I think that I remember the conversation I had with the superintendent was, let's use this year to build this oversight and train, and we'll continue to monitor those things very closely. But moving forward in the next year, for example, we're going to really hand this off, and it's going to be their program and their responsibility as well. So it's going to take some time.
Just, is someone else asking?
Oh, no, sir. I just wanted to add something to that, but go ahead, sir.
No, please. I was just going to mention your name, Dr. Martin. You put that system in place. Do you want to say a few words?
Yes, sir. That system is in place. To answer Mr. Sandoval's question, most of our teachers are paid 100% or 50% from a certain fund. And how it goes is, if that's the case, they're only supposed to do a semi-annual parse. So what that is about is just a certification stating that they work 100% or 50% for that particular funding. Now, the harder part of the employee time and effort documentation is actually when an employee is paid off 3 different funds. They have to justify that their hours are what do you call this, are spent proportionate to how much they're paid, and that's when the employee needs to do a base parse. And that's where myself and some employees here at the district are doing. But as far as our teachers and counselors at the school sites, all they're doing are semi-annual parse, sir. And all those are in place.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. All right, number 6, it's the same finding as number 1, except it's a New Mexico finding. So the resolution is exactly the same. Number 7 is purchases made without prior purchase order in place. And, you know, the law, procurement law says that we cannot pay for or receive any goods or services without a purchase order in place. And this has been an issue that's been vexing me since I got to in this role. And it's going to take some time and training, but we simply must put in place a concerted and effort that we continue to make sure that we manage closely with those people who have direct contact with vendors. And one of the issues has been that the vendors have not been very compliant with our procurement laws either. And so last year, we put in place now where we deactivated every single vendor. And in order to reactivate that vendor, the vendor had to complete a new vendor maintenance form, which included an attestation that they would follow. And we explain what the procurement law is, and that attestation that they would follow those procurement laws, and that they understand that if they sent or received or gave us any service or anything like that without a purchase order in place, that the district was not liable to pay that bill. And it creates some uncomfortable things at times, but I don't mind being uncomfortable as long as it makes us legal. So we have to really work hard with those people who are ordering supplies and ordering goods and services, that they don't violate that law. We just had that happen a couple of weeks ago again. And so this is something that we're going to have to work on continually. This has been a finding every single year, and we simply have to find a way to resolve that so that we don't keep getting that finding. But it's not, yes.
Are we holding people accountable for making purchases without the prior purchase orders in place?
Well, accountable meaning I hold the vendor accountable. First of all, because I tell them, and I'm very upfront and clear that the district is not, and I give them a copy of the law, and I said the district is not responsible for this bill. Number two, we're not going to pay this bill. And I talked to Mr. Perez, and he suggested, like others in other districts I've seen, 3 strikes and you're out, that we begin to start monitoring how frequently this happens with that school or individual. And after three times where we've done training or we've documented where there's been issues, that school and that individual won't be able to make any purchases whatsoever. It'll all have to be centralized at the district office. And we're talking not just, and I'm not going to blame principals, we're talking principals, and we're also talking their staffs, like the secretary, those types of folks who, and even coaches who've really worked hard to educate and train to help individuals understand what that law is. Some folks still refuse to follow that. And we did have one instance where I went to Mr. Perez and said, this has to stop. We have to do something. And he did take action with that particular individual. But it's going to take a lot of work and continued effort on our part, because I don't want this a very easy finding to eliminate, and we're not doing it yet. So it's going to take some time. The number 8 is this background checks, contracts, and licensing. So the background checks through HR, it went through a period of time where they were able to take the background checks that were done by the PED, and they recognize now that we can't do that. That's no longer available. So they put in place a mechanism to do that. However, by the time we had that in place and we did this most recent audit, that was still not resolved. And so that's why we've gotten another finding. But I know that Ms. Salazar has already corrected this, and I don't anticipate that moving forward, we're going to have that finding again with the background checks. The contracts, on the other hand, are a different story. So this was, for example, and I'll use Mr. Miller as a perfect example, where he moved from a teacher in one school to the principal in another school. And even though we documented his change in salary and change in work calendar and those things, and he signed it, we never modified that contract to accurately reflect what his earnings would be for that year. And so when the auditors pull the payroll reports and then they pull the contract and they put them together, they don't line up. And so they're telling us that we need to get that completely lined up. And so in the new PARS, the Position Action Request program through iVisions, we are now able to, or we will be moving forward, able to completely revise that contract and have that individual either sign it electronically or sign it in pen and then have that uploaded so that when the auditor pulls this, they'll be able to see exactly what happened and how those completely match up. So that's going to be in place as well. So that's, I'm confident that we may get a finding this year on that, but moving forward, we've got ideas on how to fix that. The I-9 compliance is the immigration documentation that has to be in place for every single employee before they set foot on the property and and start working. And in some cases, we didn't have that documentation, or that documentation was misfiled in the employee file. It's against the law for us to put that documentation in the actual employee file. We have to keep it in a separate location and a separate area so that it's not part of the employee file. And some of these, we finally were able to go and clean those out and put them in the correct place. Again, Ms. Salazar has a process in place to prevent that from happening again. And then, let's see here. There we go. Number 10 is this improper use of credit card. This one really made me mad because we got rid of that credit card the 3 weeks after I got here 2 years ago. But because the credit card company would not send us a final bill because it wasn't in my name, it took us 1.5 years to get that final bill and pay it. And because we did that, we got a finding for it. We put in place now, we got rid of all the credit cards. We used to have a Walmart card and a credit card through TBK Bank. And the law only allows us to have a credit card through Bank of America, but I didn't even see the need for that. So we replaced all of those with P cards, which are procurement cards, which are tied to a purchase order. Someone writes a purchase order, they want to buy something at Walmart or whatever. We load that, we get that purchase order, we load the card with that amount of money, they go and buy it, we reconcile and pay the bills. It's really easy. It's very much a much better process as well for coaches who are taking their athletes out of town for restaurants. We no longer have to have that restaurant as a vendor. We just use it like a credit card and on we go. And it's been a great program for us. Again, I don't see that that's going to happen next year. Number 11 will definitely not happen because we started in April with the audit, which will be due to the state auditor by October, which will be approved by November, which we'll be able to either publish at the end of 30 days after that. And so we know that that late audit is not going to happen, and number 11 will also be off of the books. Number 12 is a repeat of number 7 above, except it was a New Mexico finding versus federal finding. So that's what we've done with the audit in terms of progress on addressing those findings. Before I move on, are there any other questions about these findings that I can answer for you? Great.
There's a lot of thunder, just so everybody knows. If for some reason the power goes off and we get kicked out, it'll take us a couple of minutes to get back on.
Oh, okay. So I'm not creating the thunder. That's good to hear. Yeah. So I do want to report that we were successful in submitting and getting our budget approved for this year. The initial budget now is $68,473,000, which includes our operating budget as well as the federal funds. What it does not include is the new ESSER 3 or the American Rescue Plan funding, which is another $14 million. So this budget's going to go up by $14 million very shortly. So it'll be almost $89 or $92 million. So we're really excited about that. This is our operating budget, $42 million. This comes from the state equalization guarantee funds, mostly salaries, benefits, and some other items there as well. If you want details, I can be happy to sit down with anyone and provide those details. But here are some items in our overall budget. Title I funds are equal to 1.9 million. The Carissa funds, which is ESSER 2, came to $6.5 million. Food service budget is 3.9 million, and transportation is down 300,000 this year for $1 million in terms of these are some of the major ones. So here's some issues that continue to vex us and what we're doing about them. And what we're really working to is reorienting old habits along those who have access to making purchases. We're going to work really hard again this year on staff training and compliance. We have a number of training programs coming up in August that we're going to really begin to out the gate work with to try to make sure that people understand how to use these funds and to make requisitions properly. We have been working very hard on some internal process improvement. And as you probably know, that's difficult for some people who are accustomed to doing things one way, but we're really working hard to make sure that we communicate better with each other and that we work together for the common outcome. And this cash management, I just want to touch on this briefly. Last year, I think you might remember that we had some discrepancies in cash from events or sporting events or things like that. And so we identified where those issues were and did some training, and then COVID hit, and then we didn't have a whole lot of events going on that required us to handle cash. And if you think about it, there are teachers and secretaries and coaches and lots of people raising money and handling cash and going into a central sort of repository at the school site to make a deposit that had to be made within 24 hours, all of that. But we had too many discrepancies that were going on. We had some where, there was $50 missing here, or there was cash that somehow either was miscounted where it came off of the teacher's desk into the office. By the time it got there, that was missing as well. And we didn't have enough evidence to do anything about that other than to say, document that and do some training. So instead of having all of this cash running around the offices in different hands, I decided that we need to move into the Jetsons time and start working with direct purchases through online purchases. So a teacher, for example, at Blue Water Elementary, if they want to have a fundraiser, they can create a store within this new program that we are going to be launching at the end of this month. And they'll be able to create that store, and anyone can purchase items through there, and they pay with a credit card. You don't have to have an account with the school or anything. You just can buy these items. And we practiced with this at the prom and sold prom tickets that way at Grants High School just to see how it went. We had a number of users on a cross-functional evaluation team to look at that, and they honed it down to one vendor. And this will significantly reduce the amount of cash in the hands. It won't eliminate it. But for example, you'll be able to buy tickets for your sporting events and take your phone, and they'll scan the phone, and they'll be able to get your ticket right there, scan that phone, and move forward. So we're really going to work hard to reduce the amount of cash that's floating around. And of course, using our Visions program to its fullest functionality. That was one goal I had, if you remember, 2 years ago when I first came and reported to you all, that one goal I had was to use this Visions program, our accounting program that we had, to its fullest functionality. And so as we continue to move forward with identifying best practices, we're going to put some of those in place. So I'm happy to answer any questions from you.
Mr. Maldonado, a question on the chat. Do we have any audit committee meeting dates coming up?
I think in late August or early September. I haven't heard. The auditor gave us a list of items that they still want from us, and so we're working to pull those together, but we don't have anything scheduled yet.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Perez. Mr. Maldonado, what kind of blight does this put on our audit? Where are we at as far as, are we getting a slap on the hand or a fist to the side of the head?
No. In fact, actually, I have to tell you that when I went before the NMFA board to sell our bonds, we were questioned again about our audit findings, because the previous year we had 26 findings and that was a grueling interview. But the second one, they were very complimentary of the district making great progress. And I think that anyone who sees the progression of how things are moving forward has been very complimentary for us. They understand that these things take time. Even our auditors came in and during the opening conference said to us, this is much better than last year. And in fact, they complimented my staff, our business office staff, for having everything put together. I was very proud of our staff and how hard and diligent they've worked to make sure that we have done everything that was asked of us and gone beyond that. So I think that you're going to see, Ms. Hunt Daly, you're going to see continued progress. And I think even next year, we're going to see continued progress. I don't anticipate any big surprises coming out of that. I think the worst is over for us. And so I'm very proud of that. And I think you'll see that as well. And you'll also be able to be proud of that as well.
So of those 26 findings we had prior, are we still addressing some of them? Have we taken care of how many?
Well, we took care of half of them, which is why we didn't get the finding again, right? So we took those 26 findings and did as much as we could in that first year to address those, which is why moving forward, we didn't have those repeat findings, right? So I think to answer your question, I think we're addressing them as we go and sort of crossing them off the chalkboard and saying that one's done, put to bed. We're not going to have that again. Does that answer your question?
Well, when you talk about repeat findings, is it noted in our audit that there's these numbers that show that we don't have repeat findings in these ones that were identified prior?
So yes, and the answer, so I'll give you a perfect example would be the I-9 filing, right? And the HR filing in terms of the background checks, because this particular audit came on the heels of the previous one. We didn't have a chance to clean it all up before the next audit started. And so that's why we had that repeat finding on the I-9 and also on the background checks and also on the cash controls. So as we continue to move forward and clean those up, they will drop off. I imagine it would be my goal to have only half a dozen findings. I don't want any findings, but every school district is going to have findings. My goal would be, I think if I get to five or six findings, I think I would be a very happy man. And I think the board should be very happy with how well things are going with those findings. I think there's always going to be a couple of findings. So if we got down to 5 or 6, I think that would be good.
Okay, just as maybe an idea, it would be nice if our audit company could relate that their remarks in a letter that we could put in our file saying that that we're progressing and we're moving forward. You might request them to have them submit a letter to our district so that they know that you're trying and that you're moving as swiftly as you can. I know, being an accountant too myself, I know that there's, it's no easy process to fix something that's been going on for years. So, but I would just like them to know that we are progressing forward and that I'd like to get to the point where only we have 1 or 2 findings. And that,
even better. Yeah.
that would be
I will
much
certainly
better.
ask that of them.
But I appreciate you working on this diligently and updating us. And we'd like another update as you continue to move forward later on. And these audit meetings that you're having, I think those are very essential. And even if you have to have them more current or have more than just 1 or 2 a month or something like that, the more people working on these things, the better it is for our district. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. That's my report, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maldonado. Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you again. Presentation CNMS-BA, excuse me, Summer Leadership Conference Report. Emily or Guy, you want to report on that? You guys hear me?
I think we lost
Doc-
Mr.
Doc-
Guy. And,
Guy.
oh, yeah, and Richard just came back on.
Dr.
So,
Guy- Dr. Guy just let me know that he had a power outage and he's trying to get back on.
Yeah, it's under enlightenment.
okay. Well, I think that leaves you and me, Ron. So I'll start it off and you can add anything that I might miss. And I would like to preface this with, it's really important that we go to these trainings. There's so much information. I know Ron will agree that is provided to us as board members. And it doesn't matter how long we've been on the board, that, you know, something new always comes up every year. And so the information that we receive is very important to our duties and responsibilities as board members, especially when it comes to what PED is continually doing to the local authority of school boards. And at one time, you know, school boards were very had the power to do a lot of things because they know their school district. Now it seems like as we move along in the year, PED is kind of taking some of that authority away from us. And I think we discussed this after one training session, that more of the authority for ruling our school district should belong to the school board. Again, we go back to that one size does not fit all. So one law doesn't fit every school district because we're very different. And so we just have to make sure that the training that was provided to us by Mr. Sanchez was excellent. He gave us history on things that we weren't allowed to do as school board, and then now we're able to do that with official authority. And now it seems like now that we're doing a good job, they're trying to take it away from us again. I attended a training on curriculum and instruction. And again, this goes back to PED. They set standards for us, for school districts and schools, and to align our curriculum to their standards. But when you have schools that are so different from district to district, I preface this by saying, I told them that it should be the other way around. The school district should be telling the PED should be matching their districts, their standards to our curriculum, because we know what our students are learning, we know what they're being taught. And so they just give us a blanket standards that sometimes don't fit from one district to another. So and there was and everybody vehemently agreed with that idea that the PD needs to step back and let the schools let the districts run their schools and provide the education that is pertinent to their community and their environment. And I'm trying to think of another session I
Mr. Pettis, I'm on now, I think.
Oh, and then we talked about the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit, and then there's another lawsuit. There's, I think it's 8 districts that are suing PED for some of the things that they're doing, and most of the districts that were there on that weekend agreed that we should all stand behind each other to let PED know that we're standing firm district to district, that we need to have more things, more control over what our schools are doing, instead of having the power filtered down through us from PED. So I don't know, I think that's an agenda on whether or not we should be part of that suit. But other than that, very, very important, pertinent information that we went through through this board conference. And I appreciate those of you that went, and we had a lot to say. I know the Gallup School District and the Central School District kind of lead the way in championing our fight for us, but I think as school districts, we need to all stand together and pull together so that we can have control over our own schools. And I don't know, Rich, if we, we were at the same sessions. I saw you at some of the ones that I was in, and I saw Mr. Guy at some of the ones I was in. But and I think, you know, we might even have Mr. Sanchez come in. If we could ever get our board training together to come in and maybe brief us on some of the things that he presented at this last board conference, that might be an idea, so we can get that information out to the rest of our board members who didn't attend.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Dr. Guy, you have any comments on the New Mexico NMSBA conference?
Real brief, I'm just going to list the ones that I attended. I attended the building support for my school. That's a PR workshop. The other one I attended was the one on travel and school district relations. Mr. Perez and I and Mr. Perez will discuss those things at a later date. Role of school board in issues regarding race and history. I attended that, and my expectation is that we'll hear a bit more from our attorneys with respect to those issues. Virtual and online instruction for this coming fall. The issue that I heard was related to special ed students with IEPs, and the need to ensure that the IEP drives whether or not a student is going to be a student with disabilities is going to seek online or in-person instruction, and that should be driven by the IEPs. Then they went over the legislative session this past spring and discussed a lot of different issues, and the website, the NMSBA has the listing of these workshops, and you can all access those yourselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Guy. I just have a couple of comments. It was great that everything's opening up and we're being able to go to these conferences. I went to a mental health session. I went to a cyber bullying and online safety session. Also, I went to the same one that Dr. Guy mentioned, the tribal school district relations with the Indian Education Act governing the relationships between the school boards and tribes and pueblos. It also covered the scope of reaching agreements between the parties to control public education on the tribal lands and Native American students, including under the best practices under the FERPA and the IDEA, and for the parent and permission and participation. So I just wanted to read that because it's something that I really needed to learn about the FERPA issue. And I was just glad I had an opportunity to go. Thank you. I guess we'll move on to action items. Action item A, consideration of approval to approve the application for broadband deficiency correction award 2021. Your recommendation, Mr. Perez?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, Board, I do recommend that we approve the application for broadband deficiencies correction for award for 2021 and should be 2022.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So move. Dion Sandoval.
Thank you, Mr. Sandoval.
Emily Hunt Daly, second.
Discussion?
Yeah, give us some summary of what this is all about.
Yeah, Ms. Whitebird, are you on?
Sure. Yes, I am. Thank you. Good evening, Board President, board members and Mr. Perez. The two applications that we are seeking approval for are related to our funding year 21 projects that will be funded through the E-rate program. What PSFA does is awards us 5% of it. So the state helps us pay for improvements to our our wide area network build out, as well as our category 2 hardware improvements that support all of our network connections throughout the entire district. So right now, the category 1 is for our fiber project that is going into our Cebolleta Elementary School. That's a project currently in process right now. If there's any funds cost related to that, PSFA will pay 5% of that, and E-rate will pay the 95%. As for the second application, the category 2 equipment, that is for all of our hardware that sends the data throughout our entire network at each school and here at our data center. We want to, this will be our second 5-year upgrade cycle, and this is the award money that the E-rate program helps us pay for that upgrade. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions from the board? If not, roll call.
Dr. Garcia,
Yes.
Emilian Bailey,
Yes.
Richard Jones,
Aye.
Leon Sandoval,
Yes.
Ron Ortiz.
Aye. Action item B, motion carries. Action item B, consideration of approval of 2021-2022 commercial service agreement with TLC. Your recommendation, Mr. Perez?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, Board, I do recommend approval of the 2021-2022 commercial services agreement by TLC.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Leon Sandoval, aye. Oops.
Need a second?
Garishambo seconds.
Okay, any discussion?
Let's have the scope of work discussed.
Mr. Lee?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Perez. The scope of work is in the documents that you have there as a part of that agreement. It's to provide quarterly service for the equipment, for all equipment. It says attached equipment, but it is all of heating and cooling equipment at Cabero Elementary, Grants High School, Laguna Acoma Junior Senior High School, Milan Elementary, Los Alamitos, Mesa View, Mount Taylor, Blue Water, Cebolleta, and San Rafael. If you'll remember last year, the service agreement only covered 6 of the 10 schools, and we're trying to bridge that and go ahead and get them to cover all schools within the district. That's why there is an increase to the annual cost. The contract will include filters, belts, cooler pad, floats, pumps, coil cleaning, and general maintenance of the system. Now, if we run into a situation where there are major repairs, then they will quote that separately, and it'll go through the procurement process through the business and finance department. Also, through the contract, we get a 10%. They'll extend the on-call service for the following school for all the schools, and they'll receive the same benefits. Priority scheduling, 10% discount on all labor for additional work, and then reduced rates on holidays and emergencies. So that's the exact same language as last contract, only we have cleaned it up to include all schools.
Any questions for Mr. Lee?
This is a sole source through CES.
This is not a sole source, however, it is through the CES RFP process.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee, is that amount also include the outside work they're doing now with the the fixing of the HVAC or the things that are going on at the different schools?
Ms. Hunt Daly, the work that they are doing now, some of it is work within the contract. For example, the cleaning of the coils in preparation for wintertime. They're going through the whole district, and those coils have not been cleaned. Some of them since the building was built, some of them way before I got here. I don't think we had any coils that were cleaned on our heating system for years. And that is within the contract. That's just regular service that's not been occurring. It also includes checking and making small repairs to any of our swamp coolers or anything like that. Now, some of the work that they're doing, if they're finding something that's outside of this scope of general maintenance, then they will provide me a quote and I'll run that through business and finance with a purchase order, and we do that separately. So this is for services of servicing the equipment, which is preventative maintenance, trying to get the longest life we can out of the system.
So do we anticipate the contract amount that we have now going down as things get fixed, or are we going to maintain that amount for years?
Well, if Ms. Hunt Daly, if you'll recall, we've had an open HVAC position in our district for quite some time, and that has been what has forced us into a service agreement situation, because we do not have an HVAC technician, and we've had the position open for a long time and we haven't had applicants. And so it really puts us in a spot where if we don't do something like this, then basically we have unqualified people that are trying to maintain some of this equipment that is some of it's pretty recent technology. Now, some of it not so much, but we really rely on this service agreement to maintain and provide the preventative maintenance so that we don't have so much of the reactive maintenance on these systems.
Are we trying to find qualified people to do some of this scope of work? Or,
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
I said, are we trying to find some qualified people to do this scope of work that we're giving to TLC?
Yes, sir. President Ortiz, our intent is to find a qualified HVAC technician, journeyman HVAC technician, and then this contract we would have to reevaluate if we were to hire an HVAC technician that we could count on to do some of this work. But we have had a very difficult time finding an applicant period. So.
Okay.
And that's what we had discussed at one of the previous board meetings when we were talking about the possibility of giving was stipends or to encourage people to apply within the district for not only teaching positions, but I had also mentioned for some of those specialty posts in maintenance, with electrician, plumber, and so forth, because we are having a hard time finding it.
And
Mr. Sandoval, that's correct. And I think Mr. Perez can really answer that question really well.
yes, I had pushed to, we're right now, all the classified staff is a $3,000 sign-on. But we had discussed, I'm not sure if it's in place yet, on Mr. Maldonado or Ms. Salazar, but we agreed that we wanted to up that for those and claim that as a hard to fill classified position.
Mr. Pettis, we do have an approved amount. We do have 4,500 that we are offering our journeymen. And so we do have that incentive in place, and it has been advertised.
Any other comments, questions?
One more question, Mr. Lee. Since we're sending out or having a service contract take care of some of these maintenance problems, are we reducing the number of our maintenance crew, or are we at a skeleton crew? Or because if we're having somebody else do the work, then the question is what is our department doing?
I'd like to answer that,
Sure.
Mr. President, Board. So Ms. Hunt Daly, so the situation is one that we're not looking to decrease the staff. We're actually right now looking to increase the staff so that we can let go of some of this outside outsourcing of our work.
And I just want to give out the annual cost, just to be transparent. If I'm correct, it's 272, 441 and 35 cents excluding tax. Is that correct?
Mr. President, members of the board, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. If there's no other questions or comments, roll call.
Dr. Guy,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes,
Richard.
Aye.
Dion.
Aye.
Ron.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Action item C, consideration of approval of 2021-2022 NMDOT local fund grant agreement. Mr. Perez, your recommendation?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, board, I do recommend that we approve that 2021-2022 New Mexico DOT local fund grant agreement.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So move Dion Sandoval.
Need a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Jones. Any discussion? Mr. Perez, you got to talk about that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Lee, I believe that's on yours too.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, members of the board, for the last few years, we have entered into the local government road fund cooperative agreement with the Department of Transportation to assist the city in funding at first it was Second Street, and then it was First Street, and now this is for the Washington Street projects, which really works well with our Mesa View Elementary construction, and there's talk of the biopark, and there's talk of a lot of things out in that part of town. This is us asking the Department of Transportation for a grant. It's a grant for $25,445 to assist the city in funding that project.
Any comments, questions? I'm sorry.
I just might add that we were the only public entity that even applied, and it's through the District 6 of the Department of Transportation. So it's good that we're continuing to work with our city to make things better, make streets better, make things better. And so it's no out of pocket, no out of district cost. It's a flow through the Department of Transportation.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Lee. If there's no more comments or questions, I'll do roll call.
Dr. Garchavo,
Yes.
Emily Hunt Bailey,
I'm sorry, yes,
Richard Jones.
Aye.
Dion Sandoval,
Yes.
Ron Ortiz.
Aye. Motion carries. Action item D, consideration of approval of the advisory policies 220 and 228, second read. Superintendent Perez.
Yes, sir, Mr. President, board,
Your recommendation.
I do recommend that we approve the advisories policies and approve the advisories to turn them into policies, numbers 220 through 228. This is our second read, of course, and an action.
I will entertain a motion.
This is Gar Shambo, move to approve.
Need a second?
Dion Sandoval, second.
Discussion? We have Ms. Salazar.
Yes. Ms. Salazar.
Good evening, Mr. President, board members, and Mr. Pettis. As as suggested by Mr. Perez, we would like to go over some of the policy advisories. We have a total of 9. Our policy advisory with GBEA staff ethics, the only change is the legal reference. And so that will be included in the policy. The next policy is going to be on GBEB staff conduct. And just the language has been added as far as all district personnel. We're also given direction for reporting and addressing ethical misconduct. We're also given direction for timelines and who is designated making reports and how the reports are to be maintained and what information is to be shared by the employees. On policy advisory 222 on GCF, professional staff hiring. There's just some items that we do need to ensure that the candidates for secondary schools should be eligible for licensure. And each candidate should provide evidence of meeting state requirements for licensure. And each candidate shall require to provide 2 fingerprint cards or equivalent. On advisory 223 on GDF, support staff hiring, what is listed as a public school may terminate an individual's employment or contract or rescind an applicant's offer of employment or offer of a contract if the applicant is offered a commences employees with a public school after the effective date. And that's support staff. On policy advisory 224, GCFC, professional certification and credentialing requirements. There's just minimally modified changes as far as referencing to House Bill 128. School volunteer has been added, and the verbiage as far as who will have unsupervised contact with children is also included in that advisory. On policy advisory 225 on GDFA, support staff certification and credentialing requirements, it just has the same language as those of the professional staff. And 226 GCQF, discipline, suspension, and termination and discharge of professional staff. The important thing on this advisory is that the reasons for termination can be disclosed at this time. And the next policy refers to our support staff, and the same thing applies to them. The advisory is that the reasons of termination can be disclosed. And then our last advisory on our GLF, reporting child abuse and child protection. The change of the reporting persons from licensed personnel in the previous policy, it went from only licensed school personnel employees to all school district personnel, school employees, school volunteers, contractors, and contractor employees. There also must be a training component applicable to all of the above persons. It also adds ethical misconduct, professional responsibilities to the training component, and it directs public education department to prepare and distribute training materials for the purpose of training.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Any questions from the board for Ms. Salazar? Okay, thank you again. Roll call.
Thank you.
Dr. Garcia,
Yes.
Emily Hunt Daly,
Yes.
Richard Jones,
Aye.
John Sandoval,
Aye.
Ron Ortiz.
Aye. Motion carries. Action item E, consideration of approval to amend the election proclamation. Your recommendation? Mr. Perez?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Board, I recommend that we approve the amendment to the election proclamation.
Need a motion?
Dion Sandoval, aye.
Need a second?
Garcia, seconds.
Okay, any discussion, Mr. Perez?
Yeah, yes, sir. I don't know if we have anybody on this evening, but I just, this is the reason we need to amend it is because of we had someone, or in the process, we ended up, instead of the 3-year proclamation, we needed that to extend to 5 years. So we need to make that correction to make it all proper to move forth with this SB 9 election. So, so does it 2020 up to 2020, 2025 instead of? Yeah, so there was a mistake in the extent, the amount of years that this was to take place. So I recommend that we approve it to correct that piece of this proclamation.
Okay. If there's no questions or comments, we'll do roll call.
Dr. Shambo,
Yes.
Daly,
Yes,
Welcome, everybody. Looks like look at 300 in that. Well, let Richard tell the story. Kyle Jones is
We
on,
got-
Richard. Great.
We got somebody's mic on.
Hunt flavors are great.
I was just vote aye.
Richard Jones, Leon Sandoval,
Aye.
Leon Sandoval. Ron Ortiz.
Aye. Motion carries. Action item F, consideration of approval to purchase school supplies for all GCCS students. Your recommendation, Mr. Perez.
Yes, sir, Mr. President and board, I recommend that we approve the purchase of school supplies for all GCCS students.
Any comments? Oh, sorry, motion.
Leon Sandoval, so move.
Thank you, Mr. Sandoval. Need a second?
Emily Hunt Daly, second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just like to make a comment that this is the second year that we're able to purchase the basic supplies for all students throughout the district. Any GCCS student for the third year, I'm sorry. This is the third year we've done this now. And so along with the Chromebooks that we're providing for all students, we're also providing the school supplies. And the way we've done this, we've taken information from all the principals got information from the teachers, and we did our best to get all of the basic supplies that students would need to attend school. Of course, it doesn't include backpacks or anything that's outside of the basic needs, but we do have a pretty sound list of school supplies for the students, and we have a process for getting them out to the schools and the students.
I think that's great. Any comments or questions?
Mr. Perez, real
Yes,
quickly. If I remember the first time we did it, we still had schools putting out lists of items at Walmart. So are there still going to be requests by teachers such as that that we will see in stores like Walmart asking for specific things?
I wasn't aware of that, Dr. Archambault, but I'm going to look into that immediately.
Well, it's just a matter of clarifying what it is that we are going to provide and what may still need to be purchased by parents. That's all.
Yeah, and Dr. Archambault, Mr. President, so there may be situations that, because we did the general blanket purchase for the supplies, but I'm sure there's going to be several places that we missed where they might need something that's a little bit different in different classrooms.
Probably like hand sanitizer, wipes and
Yeah.
stuff like that, additional things.
Or maybe a class is doing a special science project that we didn't think about, that is going to take materials that we didn't, that weren't submitted.
Mr. Perez, I also think you need to get this information to teachers, because I know my grandkids get lists from their teachers saying that they need to buy these and have them available at the start of school. So our teachers need to know what supplies we're providing so that they're not duplicating it in their list that they hand out to their students.
Mr. Perez, may I make one comment also about the hand sanitizers, PPE? That's going to be purchased separately. PPE, tissues, hand sanitizer, are not part of the school supplies list for students. This will be completely a separate purchase for those items.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Maldonado. And we do have a lot of hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes and those types of things still from the big purchases we made during the pandemic. So we should be good in that area.
For a while. Okay, any more comments or questions? If not, we'll do roll call.
Dr. Guy Archambault,
Yes.
Emily Hunt Daly,
Yes,
Richard Jones, Deion Sandoval,
Aye.
Ron Ortiz,
Yes. Motion carries. Consent agenda. Superintendent Perez, your recommendation?
Yes, sir. Mr. President and Board, I recommend that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Need a motion?
So move, Deion Sandoval.
Second?
Emily
Darshon
Hunt
is taking-
Daly.
Emily seconds.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not your recommendation, Mr. Perez, I'm sorry.
Recommend.
Proceed. Call
You got
roll
it.
call.
Okay. Superintendent Perez said he recommends we approve. So need a roll call.
Dr. Guy Archambault,
Yes.
Emily Hunt Daly,
Yes,
Richard Jones, Deion Sandoval,
Aye.
Ron Ortiz.
Yes. Superintendent's report, Mr. Perez.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Board, and everyone who is remaining on the with us this evening. Just a couple of quick comments. I need to let everybody know that we're awaiting the PED's guidance in the next day or two on our reentry, final reentry details, which I'm understanding is going to include information on wearing of masks and vaccinations and those types of things. As soon as I get that, I will send information out to everybody, all of our staff and families in the district. So we have that coming. And the other thing I wanted to mention, we're going through the policies, just I'm not sure if the board is aware that Dr. Don Williams, who was the founder of basically the founder of all this policy program that's been in our state for many years and in part of Arizona, passed away last week, Dr. Don Williams. So just condolences for whoever is involved or whoever knew him. I didn't know him personally. He's a good man. Knew his work really well. So it was a big loss to the state and to the school boards throughout the state and the districts. So I just wanted to make that mention. And then on our superintendent's, on my superintendent's report, I just wanted to share how we're doing with the public forums. You know, we talked about how we need to get out and talk to all of our stakeholders for the new money that we received through the rescue plan and ESSER, all the funds that are coming in that were unexpected. We've had several meetings with many stakeholder groups, including Laguna Acoma Navajo. We've had parent meetings. We've had yesterday, I believe we had a district staff a forum. So we're collecting a lot of ideas, a lot of input into the expenditures of those funds. I believe at this point we've already met the requirements of meeting with stakeholders to a large degree, but we're going above and beyond. And we're going to collect these ideas and then go back out to these same stakeholder groups and bring the information that we've collected back to them and have another round of discussions with all of the people, all of our community partners as we move forth in developing our plan for the expenditures of these significant amount of funds. Then I'd like to move right into design updates. If Mr. Lee, you want to give us an update on Blue Water Mesa View projects?
Sure, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Pettis. I'm going to give a very brief presentation here regarding Blue Water and Mesa View with the intent to come back to you all with a more in-depth report as we learn more information. But one thing that we've run into, well, the original award, if you remember, was for about 13 or 14,000 square feet for Blue Water. I'm going to talk about Blue Water first. And we fought, and Mr. Perez went to the council. He and I went to him, and we advocated for our kids, and we got that up to 18,181 square feet, which was for 102 students. Our argument was actually for 120 students, and we're not done with that argument yet. That's another fight down the road. But right now we are at 18,181. The design for the building, there was a very strong push from our community to design that building to as close to the original building as we could. So we have worked towards that. But really now we're running into some budgetary issues with the COVID-related issues such as transportation and manufacturing. The cost of materials and the length of time to get those materials has increased significantly. With that said, one of the things that we are looking at right now is extending for the general contractor when we get to that point, when we get to the point of the bid on the Blue Water project, extending the amount of time for the contractor to procure the materials before they even start construction. And the reason for that is it's just not reasonable to expect materials that were normally 8 to 12 weeks out. Now those materials such as structural steel are 8 months out. And so we're really haggling with that. I had a meeting last week in Albuquerque with the architects from FBT on the Blue Water project, as well as the architects from Wilson, which are the Mesa View. I had separate meetings, but now we're considering that. And the reason we're considering it is to save some cost and be able to finish the project on time. So that's the gist of that. Also, we know that we're pretty excessive on space right now. And so we're looking at things that we can do to cut some space, but still be able to provide all the services that we need to. So we're going to have a very detailed report. I'll have FBT come in and give you another report about those spaces and about the decisions that we're making before we go into the RFP for construction. We anticipate that to go out in September. And so we'll be giving that report to y'all at that time. It will be very detailed and very comprehensive. I'll answer any questions you have about Blue Water at this time, or I'll move on to Mesa View. Mesa View's meeting was very short, and we don't want to run into the same issues. We know we're going to have the same issues, but we want to be able to address them 6 months early rather than 6 weeks early, as we've had to do with Blue Water. So a lot of our discussion with Mesa View, right now we're in contract negotiations, and we anticipate bringing a design professional contract to you at the August 3rd board meeting. But we wanted to address these issues in contract negotiation with the architect rather than get 6 months down the road with the architect and then we have these issues. So that's been that was the discussion with them, and how we would address those from the beginning of design. That project is also going to be pushed back as far as we know right now, because the procurement for the contractor, them being able to get the materials to build the building, is going to be extended 4 to 6 months. And so we want to avoid that at the very end of design. We want to know about that and how we're going to handle that up front. So both projects are moving along through design, but there are going to be some issues that we want to report to you all in depth and detail here, beginning with the August 3rd board meeting, but then into the September meetings as we start working with the contractor for the Blue Water project. So I'll answer any questions you might have at this time.
Mr. President, not so much a question, but just a comment, Mr. Lee. I really appreciate the reporting of those projects. I think it's important that the board know what projects are going on, what expected start date, expected finish date, cost, and that just keeps us alert to any information should we ever get any questions on it. So I really appreciate you providing timely reports to us on major projects going on within the district. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President, this is Guy.
Yes, Dr. Guy.
Vance, Mr. Lee, would you clarify for me again, you're getting a lot of pressure or push on Blue Water, and I didn't quite understand what was the local concerns.
Mr. Archambault, members of the board, the big push back, if you remember about 6 months ago, was when it first came out of a 13,000 square foot, 14,000 square foot facility. That was unacceptable. For 80 years, 70 years, that community was used to a 22,000 square foot facility. And they really gave pushback on that, and understandably so. The PSFA adequacy standards are very limiting. They're more so limiting for a small school than they are for a larger 60,000 square foot facility, because you can find spaces for ancillary services and for gymnasiums and that kind of stuff. When you're talking about a 22,000 square foot facility, there is not a lot of room for error. And the community there was really passionate about not wanting to lose that gym, which that was a 5,000 square foot gym, which is a very large gym for a school that size. But those are some issues those are some items that Mr. Perez and I went to the council, and he fought for that added space, and we were able to get that added space to the tune of about 4,500 square feet. We need to complete design, and then as we go into we go back to the council to get an award for the construction money, we're going to talk to them a little bit about design and why those spaces are necessary. You know, there's some spaces that we'll definitely argue. The dining room and gymnasium are a combo space. I'm just throwing some examples out there. And so we feel like we need to be able to let kids eat while we have another group of kids that are finishing up some PE possibly. We are combining Native American instruction with music, because both programs are halftime programs, if you will. And so we're trying to be reasonable and rational with our spaces and not take advantage of anything for that matter. We want our kids at Blue Water to have all the technology and all the space that they need to have a healthy learning environment.
I understand that.
At the same time,
Mr. Lee,
gross square footage was the issue.
Mr. Lee,
yes.
When the architects and you presented the blueprints, I did not see an inclusion of the old gym. Now I get the impression that there is an effort to sustain the old gym.
No.
Is that correct? Or am I wrong?
Dr. Archambault, no. The intent has always been, early on, we determined that the old gym was not going to work. And so the intent is to build a new gym, but the community of Blue Water wanted a large gym like they were moving out of. And we're still fighting for total gross square footage, but as far as the gym is concerned, we want that to be adequate for them to be able, for the students there to be able to eat in there as a dining room, as well as carry on physical education and other activities simultaneously. So,
thank you.
The old gym is out. We're basically building a new gym.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Then that brings me to a question. I know that, is there going to be an opportunity to revisit the Cabero School which is a gym in cafeteria inside a gym. To make it worse, it has glass sidings. So if they ever have a basketball game and a ball goes through the glass windows, glass doors, that's very harmful to our kids. So is there going to be a chance to revisit? I mean, we're talking about a school with how many kids? The school is already too small, and so there'll be an opportunity to revisit, perhaps building them a gym that fits their school's capacity.
Yeah, Ms. Hunt Daly and members of the board, we're always looking at our facility master plan and if it matches up with our needs, and that's just part of the process. So yeah, that's a great question, and I'll definitely write it down. And when we work through facility master plan, and we're getting ready to go into that process, our 5 years are up on that. So that'll be something that we will talk about.
Do you have the number? Do you have the number of students at Cabero versus the number of students at Blue Water?
I don't have that in front of me at this time.
I can get that.
I can estimate, but
Cabero's about 250 students.
And the building's built for about 300.
And Blue Water?
Mr. Miller, do you have your current enrollment? Oh, he's not on, maybe. So at Blue Water, I think we're closer to 60, less than 60.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know when we started the application pre-COVID, we were around 100, between 90 and 100. And that's where our argument came for a school for 100, 102 is what the award ended up at right now.
Okay.
I think we need to just wait and see how this all pans out this coming fall in terms of enrollment.
Okay. But I appreciate you writing the question down because I think just like Blue Water, I also think that the community of Cabero also needs a bigger gym, one that's separate from their cafeteria. I was appalled when I went up there and I saw that the gym is surrounded by glass windows.
I can't answer to that. I'm sorry. I wasn't here.
Duly noted, Ms. Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Perez.
Yep. Mr. President, the board, I'd like to also share with you, there's been questions asked about what's our status on hiring openings in the district and so on and so forth. And rightly so. It's a good question to ask at this time of the year. I have Ms. Salazar is going to share some specific information, but I told another stakeholder group just recently is when you put it in perspective, we have a few openings and we have work to do. But in relation to our neighboring districts, I think we're in a pretty good place in relation. So, Ms. Salazar, do you want to share?
Good evening, Mr. President, board members, and Mr. Pettis. I would be more than happy to share what our status is and where we're at as far as openings. I'm really excited. We have wonderful things that we are going to be offering, and I'm going to try to share my screen right now. Hopefully, I'll be able to share my presentation.
Share the rights.
Okay, can you all view the presentation that's titled Human Resources?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I do want to inform you that we did have 49 employees that had resigned or retired this year. We also had 71 positions that were not filled last year, which gave us 120 positions to fill. I am really proud to present that we have 66 new employees, and so we have 54 openings still at this time. And so our openings right now, if you'll see the next slide, we have our high schools and our middle schools as well. Grants needs 4 certified teachers and or certified staff members and 3 classified staff members. Early high school has no vacancies. with 3 certified positions still open and 2
Who is there?
classified positions open.
I think we lost you. If you can hear me.
I could
I
hear
can
you.
hear. We're fine.
Would you like me to continue?
Yeah, okay, you're back. You're back on now.
Okay, what was the last thing you heard in the boardroom?
You just started the slide.
Okay, perfect. As noticed on the slides, I do have every campus with our secondary campuses and their openings on what we're currently at. I did update it today, so your slides may look a little bit different because as each recommendation comes in, I have a well-beaten path to Mr. Pettis's office so we can get those recommendations approved. Grants has 4 openings, certified staff members that are open, 3 classified openings. Early high school has no vacancies at this time. Laguna Acoma Junior Senior High has 3 certified openings, 2 classified openings. Los Alamitos Middle School has 1 certified opening and 4 classified openings. Our elementary vacancies at Blue Water, we have 3 half certified teachers. And the reason it shows that way is because they do share personnel with San Rafael. And so you'll see with Cebolleta and Cubero and Blue Water and San Rafael, you'll see those half positions because they're serving both campuses. So Blue Water has 3 half positions, certified openings, and 1 classified. Cubero has 1 full-time position and then the 2 half certified positions and 1 full-time classified and a half classified that they will be sharing with Cebolleta. Mesa View has 4 certified openings, 1 classified opening, and Milan has 1 certified staff member that's still open at this time. Mount Taylor has 2 certified staff members that they need to fill and 3 classified, and San Rafael will mirror Blue Water with their 3 50% certified opening. And then of course, Cebolleta has the 2 certified, the 2 half certified and 1 half-time certified. So at this time, we have 54 openings in our district, which I'm really proud of. We started with 120. We're not where we want to be. I'm really excited to get the word out that we are going to be the greatest and the best school district to work for. We do have a brochure. Mr. Brown created our brochure that went out, and we're posting that at different post offices, any businesses that have it. And so this is the front part of our brochure. We are offering our sign-on bonuses. It gives some contact information. And so of course we have some pictures that reflect our area. On the inside of our brochure, it gives you more information as far as the incentives for certified teachers. We're offering a sign-on bonus of $6,000. Certified or classified staff is offered a $3,000 bonus. And then if you'll notice below this classified, we do have the certified journeyman, electrician, plumber, mechanic, and HVAC up to $4,500. And we are still offering our hard to fill positions for counselors, math, science, and special ed in the amount of $5,000. And we actually have some advertisements in the newspaper. We're a little bit competitive with our surrounding areas, just some friendly competition. So we went ahead and pulled some ads out in the Gallup newspaper. We also have advertising in our Farmington. We have it in our current, our local newspaper as well, Albuquerque and Las Cruces. And so this is the ad that we have advertised, and it does give some information as far as our sign-on incentives and information on how to get a hold of us and apply with us online. We are also advertising our rural stipend. So teachers that come to our areas, you know, these other campuses as far as Cebolleta Elementary, Laguna High School, Cubero, and Blue Water, they also will be able to earn an additional stipend. So we are offering, we're offering a lot, and we're really excited to continue our work. And at this time, that's my report. And I'm going to try to stop sharing and see if you have any questions at this time.
Ms. Salazar, Mr. President, Ms. Salazar, what is the turnaround time once you interview and select it and then the individual is notified?
My goal is to get it approved by Mr. Pettis that same day and called. So as soon as I get that recommendation from the campus, I meet with Mr. Pettis several times a day. And as soon as I get those recommendations, we discuss them. So I'm saying between 1 and 2 days turnaround from our department. So as soon as they get them in, my goal is to have all of those recommendations approved that same day.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Board, I got one more update that kind of leads into the calendar, if you don't mind, Mr. President. I'd like to let everybody know the funeral services for Rosemary Calvert, who's well known in the district. Service will be Thursday, the 22nd at 9:45 at St. Teresa Church in Grants. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, announcements, they're there. Check them out, see what's going on. Future agenda items, get with me or Mr. Perez and we'll get them on there for you. Adjournment, I need a motion to adjourn.
So we'll be on Sunday.
Need a second.
Emily Hunt Daly, second.
Okay, roll call.
Dr. Fire Shambo,
Yes.
Yes.
Richard Jones. John Sandoval,
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries, meeting adjourned at 7:33. Thank you, everyone. Good night.